Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1GV, Whiskey 1, Good Vibrations. In my last video having to do with conditions on the 160 meter band, a mention was made of spherics, atmospheric static, static in quotes, noise caused by thunderstorms. That can be a problem even in the so-called winter months, in the southern United States particularly, and of course in much of South America, the winter months here, the summer months there, but there's a lot of the world where thunderstorms occur frequently, almost all year round, and would render 160 meters practically useless because, as you may have noticed, as you go down in frequency on the amateur bands, the atmospheric noise tends to get worse and worse, if there's any of it at all. Now, I operated from Minnesota, which is far away from any lightning generating thunderstorms in the months of, say, December, January, February. Very, very rare. So it's a pretty quiet band if you get away from the other sources of human-made noise. But what a lot of people may not realize is that there are plenty of areas in the tropics which also have very few thunderstorms all year round. When I lived in Kona, Hawaii, spherics were not an issue, or hardly ever an issue, even when hurricanes were nearby, which wasn't too often. It was quite an interesting thing, relatively static or spheric free, even on 160 meters, most of the time, but not all. And I remember once on the weather forecast coming out of Honolulu that I saw on television every day as I chomped down my cheese sandwiches or peanut butter sandwiches with Big Island Bakery sourdough rye bread, back in the days when I was so active I could eat anything I wanted, was always hungry. Back in those days, I remember the weather forecaster saying there are some storms up northeast of the island right now. These are thunderstorms, he said, as if that was an unusual thing to see in that part of the world, because he used two separate words. They're very strange storms, they are. They're thunderstorms. And a lot of the tropical Pacific and the tropical oceans in general rarely have spherics. And so a lot of 160 meter DX can be had with countries down in that vicinity, or if you live down in that part of the world. You're fortunate indeed if you have any real estate, or if you're out in the middle of the ocean. In international waters, you could fly a kite-supported antenna and work 160 meters to your heart's delight and your brain's demise. Of course, the nighttime hours would still prove superior by far to the daylight hours because of the delta layer, D layer of the ionosphere, which tends to block signals at 1.8 megahertz. And the D layer occurs in the daytime when the sun is up. When the sun goes below the horizon, the D layer vanishes, and you can then work worldwide DX as long as the other station is also in the dark part of the world, the dark side of the world, or along the gray line sometimes, the transition line where the sun is always on the horizon. You shine a bright light at a globe and half of it's lit and half of it's not, and then there's the gray line. Propagation can be very interesting on all bands along that gray line. I've yammered enough. I don't want to make these videos too long, because then they're hard for the computer to process. Woe is me. Stan Gibilisco, W1GV, saying 73 and so long, which, on any frequency, at any time of the day or night, or year, or solar cycle, always translates to so long, da 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 da.